White House, one would be Coons, and the other one would be Britt. Good morning, everybody. On today's agenda, we have 20 nominations listed. We'll vote on 5 of them. Jennifer Mascott, Circuit Judge, Edmund LaCour, Bill Lewis, and Harold Moody to be District Judges, and David Cursell for U.S. Attorney. I'm going to support all these nominees. We'll hold over the remaining nominees listed on our agenda for later consideration. Before turning to today's business, I'd like to discuss the recent flurry of outrage that's been expressed by people that are in office and out of office, but particularly because of what my Democrat colleagues have said in the indictment of FBI Director James Comey. The indictment returned by the grand jury contains serious charges. If you consider testifying before Congress is an important thing for people to do honestly. At the time of Comey's alleged conduct, my colleagues and I had active investigations. If the facts and evidence show that Comey lied to the Congress and obstructed the investigative work that we're doing, he ought to be held accountable. The rule of law requires truthfulness before Congress, and this body's constitutional oversight role demands it. Instead of acknowledging this fact and allowing the legal process to play out, as I saw over the weekend on television, some of my colleagues are warning us about the dangers of politicized justice, and that's perfectly right for them to make that warnings to us. But I think it's reasonable for us to look at the history of the last decade. I've long warned against political investigations and prosecutions and dual standards of justice. As one example, in 2023, I said, quoting myself, Attorney General Carlin signed off on prosecuting Trump for conduct similar to what Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton engaged in. 2 standards of justice in this country will turn our constitutional republic upside down. That's the end of my quote. During the FBI's Clinton email scan investigation, the FBI agreed to destroy records and laptops of Clinton's associates. After reviewing them, the FBI limited the scope of review and provided immunity agreements. Comey drafted an exoneration statement for Clinton way before the FBI even interviewed her and 6 other witnesses. And then President Obama publicly undermined the investigation before it was completed by saying, quote, "This isn't a situation in which America's national security was endangered," end quote. Now, you've heard about me reducing the Clinton Annex. Showed that Comey FBI had information related to conduct, quote, "a thorough and complete investigation," end quote. They didn't review it. That's the opposite of how the FBI treated Trump. The Obama administration and Comey's FBI opened crossfire hurricane on candidate Trump and falsely accused him of Russian collusion. The FBI lied to the FISA court. The now declassified Durham Annex, which I got declassified, said that the Clinton campaign planned to falsely tie Trump to Russia. The FBI helped them try to do it. And where was my Democrat colleagues and their outcry when the Biden administration weaponized the Justice Department to investigate the 92 political groups during Arctic frost. That's another bit of information that come from things I got declassified. For all these examples, there's been no outcry, no matter how outlandish and obvious the political infection. That's true even with state-level cases brought against Trump. In one of the partisan lawsuits launched against President Trump, a justice of the New York Supreme Court described the goal as, quote, the derailment of President Trump's political career and the destruction of his real estate business, end of quote. That's not the commentary of a media personality. That's what a sitting justice wrote in his concurrence. Democrats chaired the political arrest and prosecution of President Trump, his advisors, his friends, his lawyers, and even his valet. House Democrats impeached President Trump not once but twice. Democrats, their allies in the politicized justice system, raided President Trump's house, publicly released his tax returns, fined his companies, and stripped his business licenses. Democrats even tried to remove President Trump from the ballot in 2024 in more than one state. Now imagine that, depriving the American people from electing the candidate of their choice, a candidate ultimately elected by an overwhelming margin. They've engaged in inflammatory rhetoric about President Trump and his supporters, calling them fascists, authoritarians, racists, and worse. That's even after assassination attempts. I'm sure that in coming days, my colleagues will wax poetic about political prosecutions and Trump's revenge. That's what I heard on television over the weekend. But for all their complaining, they should remember where this started. They should remember the pleas and warnings from my side of the aisle. They should remember that hypocrisy is not a way to regain the moral high ground. Before turning to the nominations, I'd like to briefly comment on yesterday's hearing before this committee. Despite the criticism of partisanship, we heard from victims about the devastating impact of soft on crime policies. And for those who saw the hearing as partisan, they didn't read the extremely partisan letter Democrats sent to me attacking the president's successful anti-crime policies. Mrs. Cook was one of those victims. Her grandson was murdered in D.C. And Mrs. Cook read a victim impact statement at the sentencing hearing of her grandson's killer. Afterwards, the judge looked at her grandson's killer and commented on how he'd be tortured all day listening to the headache his actions caused. That's appalling. That sort of behavior has no place in the judiciary. I have high hopes that nominees under consideration today will never dismiss a victim's pain in their courtrooms. I'm grateful to Mrs. Cook for her testimony and to President Trump for taking stories like Mrs. Cook seriously after her local leaders failed her. Violent crime must be met with strong response, and if anything, yesterday's hearing showed that, Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley.